Okay, I have a written journal for you from 6/21, the first of that day, and the Mayan day was 3 Earth, and I want to make the type bigger, easier to see. All right, I want to, let's see, this was a 3. Okay, so that's early on in the cycle. You might notice that as we get later on towards the 10, 11, 12, 13, things are coming together. Early on, often we're exploring new things. Let's see if that holds true. I want to explore something about journaling and, more importantly, about consciousness. As I've said often enough before, these journals don't originate in mind. They come from or through the heart, in the now flow that arises there. I've also shared how when this beautiful flow started in the journals, how I wouldn't change anything, any word at all, nothing but a misspelling. To me, it was a sacred communion. I saw it as that, and I guess I didn't feel worthy of letting mind have a go at them. As time moved on, I found that my flow included changes to the journals. Nothing huge, but just to make any change, it felt huge back then. This isn't so long ago. It wasn't the changes themselves, what they contained. It was the fact that the changes were being made to something so sacred to me. And so I'm in self-observing mode as I'm watching all of this. So that took some pondering, some watch and observe time so that I could come into a better understanding of the process or even identify what was going on. Worthiness issues came up to be seen and dealt with. Since these changes came in on the same flow as the journals did, I had to welcome them too as being sacred. It was a bit strange since at this time I didn't think myself worthy of much. Only Source was worthy back then. Time and the journals moved on, continuing to change and to change me as well. During this time, I was also working on worthiness issues, owning my own divine nature, which was helping out a good bit. I was amazed to see how low my estimation of self was. Now, not consciously, but low all the same. When you observe, you see deeper. It is time and past time for all such things to go the way of the dinosaur. Now, where am I now? I see now, as I look back, a gradual invasion, if you will, of the divine into my life here. It's been a steady progression, shoving aside the false identity that thought so little of itself, obedient to its programming as it was. The divine has largely taken over my consciousness now. Not completely, perhaps, or I'd be walking on water and through walls. Nonetheless, I feel perfectly fine now in owning the journal flow and very easy about making the corrections or changes that flow through. During this time, which is approximately the last 2 or 3 years, there has been some real death going on in my consciousness. It's been so dark, so intense at times, I actually thought the body was in process of dying. Were it not for my medical intuitive pal Ken, I'd have been a good bit more concerned about it than I have been. He assures me all is well. I really didn't expect this sense or sensing of death to accompany the demise of the I that I thought I was. Each one of us holds a false image of the self, the one who we think we are. the more identified we are with this identity, this image, the worse it will go for us during this time of the letting go. For it's a time when everything false is going down, not just in the bad guys, but in us. Nor is it something any of us choose by a conscious act of free will. Heck, to make this conscious act, we'd have been using the false self to begin with. An awkward spot. A little bit like a suicide, don't you see? The self calling for the death of the self. Yet, when we call for the death and removal of all that is unreal in our lives, well, that's what we're doing. We're dismantling that. I was never so aware of this other self before, other aspect of being. To me and to any of us, our self just seems like our self, very real. How strange to discover that it is not real at all, but largely comprised of everything phony, our programming, our false ideas and beliefs. Just as we were once identified with the physical form, thinking we were this body, we have identified with this phony construct as well, taking it to be the self. Is it the mind? I don't know, but I rather doubt it. Mind is involved in its creation, of course, how could it not be? Yet, it isn't the mind that is dying, but rather the creation of our sleepling mind. We were all sleeple at one time, and it was during this time that this false image was created, the one we identified with and took to be real. So, now what? While I rooted out what false ideas I could get my hands on there in my garden of belief, still, it was a larger garden than I could handle this way. Excuse me, I'm going to let that finish. The phone's across the room, or I would get up and deal with it. Okay, while I rooted out what false ideas I could get my hands on there in my garden of belief, still, it was a larger garden than I could handle this way. I don't know how very much of what I took to be me was composed of these false images and beliefs. I didn't know how much was composed of that until they began dying. My God, but that was a dark time. I can hardly describe it. It was just like dying, as near as I've come to that before. And I didn't journal this stuff. It was too dark. You got some of it, but not much. I really felt as if parts of me were, well, it was my demise. That's how it felt. I actually felt them dying, very lost and forlorn. It was the valley of the shadow of death, for certain. Not real death, perhaps, but its shadow, or rather my shadow, was truly dying. There are many ways to look at it, but the feeling is what I'm talking about. That's what is real, what counts, and what remains. This is a very good time to be empty, my friends. Let go of absolutely everything that isn't needed, isn't necessary for your divine plan. Now, there's no need to divest yourself of things, just your attachment to them. It's as good a time to come to Jesus as there ever was. So, whether it's religion you choose, or spirituality, or even sincere atheism, it doesn't matter. Just get straight and tight with your own inner self. According to Nancy Dannison, our world and solar system will go through 3 epochs, and we're ending the second and getting ready to come into the third one now, I can tell by what's happening with me that this will be a time for all-out integrity and deeply sincere ethics. I can see that everything false, or even not quite true, is on its way out. So it's in our best interests to get this cleaning done ahead of the oncoming wave. Why is that? Because to have something you're holding on to wrested from your unwilling grasp is simply unpleasant, perhaps even painful. So why go through that if there's no need to? This is a matter of harmonizing our personal flow to the cosmic one, for it's truly a cosmic flow that's arriving to bring on big change. That's what's been lifting us up in consciousness for some time now. If we want to be on board with it when it finally and fully arrives, we need to get things going right away. Get what going? Get the flow of things going out of our lives. Get into surrender mode, in other words. It's time to really pare down to think, to what we think we can't do without. Time to see how truly ridiculous our current lists look. Time to have a life review oriented look at those lists. Likely burn them and start all over. Time for an inner shakeup. If we don't do this willingly now, it will be done for us post haste. See, I wouldn't have had such a feeling of death if I hadn't been identified with what was dying. That's why I felt like I was dying, because I so identified with and believed those thoughts and ideas. Okay, I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling this sort of flavor to the energy these days, feeling so many things just melting away. Actually, we're truly blessed, since so much of this seems to be happening on autopilot. We wake up, and from one day to the next, things have changed again and again. It's frankly amazing, but don't question it. Just stay in heart and let things flow as they will. When I was in the deepest and darkest part of this dying phase, well, so far anyway, what I found was that my life raft was to own my divine nature and to call upon that. This was about the only thing that brought any relief. Even hearing Ken say that everything was fine and the body was in no danger of dying wasn't enough. It lightened the load a bit, and I believed him. It's not that I didn't believe him, but this particular load was so very heavy that it wasn't enough. This was the time when I had recently uncovered my other lifetime as Sita in India. Hard as that one was to step up to and own, I had more than sufficient divine indications and confirmations that it was real. And it took every one of them to get me past my stubborn refusal to own it. Back then I believed, when you had a really great lifetime and you were awakened, that you were finished and you didn't come back. So I didn't figure such beings would be incarnating now. But there's a lot of us here on the earth that are not here because we need to be here. There's a lot of beings here that came in to be a part of this big change. Anyway, during this dying away time, just contemplating that other lifetime helped. I suspect we've all been gods and goddesses, divine beings, whether on this world or another one, my friends. We are some very old souls, as some say. In Nancy Danison's first book, in her Backward series, she tells of being reacquainted with, get ready for this, literally hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. And concurrent, too. Not past, present, or future, just now. Talk about mind-blowing. That is amazing. A real eye-opener. And she also recalls, as did Papa G, living lives in other forms, not just human ones. We've been very varied indeed. Do consider, if you will, how a tender soul, fresh from spirit and on its first lifetime would be. Do you really think that today's earth is any place for a loving source to send such a one? Not even, nor do I. We're mostly old and older souls and other sorts of light beings here. And it's funny, too, when you think of all these people trying to identify the reptilians and all that kind of thing. They're going to have a really good belly laugh to discover that they were probably reptilian in more than just one or two lifetimes, to have them have such a charge on that. Anyway, we're quite a hardy crew overall, those incarnate now. So, sure, we've been in a sort of amnesia, but it's time to really ditch that now. I hope you're open and will remain open to whatever comes to you on your heart flow. Are you ready to ditch simply everything you once believed? This is a part of that death I spoke about. It's all the false beliefs that are going down. And if you still believe them, are still identified with them, thus making them a part of the self, then you'll feel like I did, that you yourself are dying away. It's no fun. So it can go roughly for us, or not. So much of this is largely our choice to make. All that is untrue is melting and fading away, and we have no choice about that. That's just what's in the flow. It can't hold the higher and higher vibration on this wave, this ascending spiral that we're all on. If you pull away from it now, then when it dissolves, it won't feel like it's a part of you going down the drain, dying. Now, sure, this is tough. No doubt. It's not an easy ride either way. Some major challenges are built into it. Like I said, though, we've got to come to respect the really old souls. It's just a way of saying the really divine beings that we are, and start stepping up to that plate and being ready for what comes. It doesn't matter what comes, my friends. We can do this. We're born and bred to it, so to speak. Many, and maybe even most of us, have already ascended on this or that planet or star before now. Maybe not most of us, but among the light beings, maybe so. Ascension itself isn't new to us. Being in 3D form isn't new to us. Coming in to help with the rescue of a planet and her beings isn't new to us. So, what is new? Have you pondered this? Have you looked within and uncovered how very apt you are, how capable and truly unafraid? It's time for us to be uncovering and claiming our, I don't like words for this, our advanced inner natures. We're source beams, as Nancy says, just uncovering our divinity. So, what's new? I suspect what is new is not to lay the forms down when we ascend, for one thing. We're in process of having our biology converted so that it can make the ascending trip along with us. Now that's a new one. If what Patricia Corey reports, supposedly from what she calls the Syrian High Council, i.e. beings on Sirius star system, and who can know at this point, then the whole solar system is what's ascending here, not just us. As above, so below being a truism, then we can also see each planet and moon as the greater body or form of our sun. If the whole solar system's going, then the sun is the heart of that. Everything within the heliosphere and attached to this solar system is our sun's greater body, and it's going along for the ride. Have you thought on that? It's fun to play with and a great way to expand one's perspective, to flex it, even if it turns out not to be the way that we go. No harm done. Finally, here's the deal. We create the future with our now. This is an important time to become self-aware or more self-aware. I still don't suggest gaining this awareness only to try to modify what you observe in self. That is not the highest way. That's to leave the mind in charge, and mind's vision isn't sufficiently panoramic. Instead, by going within and finding heart and its flow, you'll be able to relax into that. This enables each one of us, as it were, to sit back and watch how Source chooses to change things, since that's what being danced amounts to. Have you had the feeling yet of saying something that you felt you really didn't say, or that didn't originate in your mind? It seemed to somehow come through you instead? If you have, then you know how my journals originate. They come through. I don't try to discover who is speaking them, since their feel to me is just native and just divine. So I trust in that flow, which has so far gotten me through some pretty rough times. By not acting until the elephant gets ready to step on your foot, you're far more likely to be letting Source run the show than mind. When I look at the time between noticing something in self that I'd like to see changed and the time it gets changed, I've seen Source at work. During this time, Source shows me more by taking me more deeply into whatever that trait is to uncover its origin. Otherwise, I'd just recreate it, right? What I see then is that Source just doesn't just go after the trait, it goes for the cause instead, which obviously works out better. This sitting still and being empty thing is very powerful. Maybe we in the West are not so well suited for it as those in the East. We can still get into it sufficiently to see the benefits and blessings it holds. Oh, and by the way, you probably and I and we all have loads of incarnations there as well. So let's just open up and be multidimensional, and we've got all the familiarity with being empty that we could want. One who is truly empty won't have any pain in this huge transition we're all making. That says a lot. Running away from pain or difficulty, we have discovered, just doesn't work. It only puts off what has to be dealt with at some point. Like a suicide, you're not blamed for it, you don't go to hell for it, you just have to come back and redo everything you ran away from. So rather than running away or even focusing on the pain, which any sort of running does, we can go forward into emptiness instead. Then the emptiness itself will swallow whatever challenges arise. It's a beautiful way to be. I guess it doesn't come out so well in words, but if you'll just go into heart, your heart will give you the message there, the truth that I'm trying to relate. It's in all of us. don't try to get it with mind, since even if you do, that won't be it. What's said here is neither from nor to anyone's mind. Now, I realize that everyone is different, so there is room for many perspectives. From where I sit, though, what I see is that those remaining in mind will have the toughest ride. I suppose it can be done, but it will take a truly dedicated master to make it happen. The trip into higher consciousness taken in mind. Frankly, I doubt that it can be done, but since anything is possible, I don't want to minimize any choice or anyone who feels that their destiny lies in that direction. I'm behind you, no matter what, my friends. After all, you are me, I am you, and we're really just one, as we'll see when we cross over or ascend. So, be letting go. No matter how you're choosing to take this trip, just be in letting go mode. Welcome emptiness. Do some exploring with it. Find out what it's like to step so out of mind that you can watch thoughts float by like clouds on the breeze and not think them. Just like a link you don't click. Good day.